Here with my friend Drew Edwards, celebrating the 25th anniversary. I feel like I've been celebrating the 25th anniversary of Halloween Man since January 1st, 2025. So let's talk about this, and I'll probably refer back to some of our panel. But you have an omnibus coming from Red 5 Comics at the end of September. So you want to talk about what's going into that?
So I went through a lot of the early years of Halloween, man. It's got a lot of the stuff that people have been saying that they want and an easy to get collection. It's got all of the Nicholas Scott stuff. It's got the hack slash crossover. And then it's got a couple of things in there that I just threw them in there because I had a particular fondness for them. There's a story called Blood God of Virtual Beach, which is kind of a creature from the Black Lagoon
I
type
enjoyed
creature.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. God of Machines, which has robots dabbling in black magic. It's just some stuff that I thought was weird and fun, and that maybe people had, perhaps overlooked when exploring Halloween Man, and I wanted to shine a light on. Even that there was kind of a semi-sequel to the hack slash crossover. I don't know that there's a lot of people that are aware of that, so I made sure that that was in there, and yes, it's a little thinner than a DC omnibus, but
It's
I'd like to
also a
think,
lot less expensive, so please, I'm
yes,
not critiquing you for that. So,
yeah. Well, I'm from Texas. Size does matter, okay?
oh, yeah, I forget. We're in California. We just don't care. Anyway, yeah, so it is coming out. It does. I think it's covering up the sort of a best of of what Drew likes most out of the first 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I see Lucy being in the original character design.
yeah,
Uh, it's it's fascinating. One, I get to see uh, kind of binging through it. That I got to see like, oh, I see your growth as a writer as well. In the storytelling, but also that it is bopping around the place. And what I find fun is it doesn't matter. A couple of the stories are like, well, if you missed it, so what? Here, catch up. There's consistent characterization. Let's just go. Go! You know,
I've always really, thinking back to comics when I was a kid, I've always been a firm believer that every comic should be able to be somebody's first. That's why, if you've ever purchased a physical Halloween Man comic or read it digitally, no matter how you've gotten your hands on it, there's bios of all the characters, there's a synopsis of whatever came before, but also, I just want these adventures that you're digging into. I want them to be, quick, clean, user friendly, kind of the way, Will Eisner used to do it on The Spirit. Sometimes, a lot of the times with The Spirit, it was, stories that were only, 10, 25 pages long, but you got a complete story out of it. And, especially the early years of Halloween Man, where it was much more of a monster of the week type comic. That's really what we leaned into. And it was fascinating actually going back and looking at those early years because, some of these stories when we were cleaning them up for the collection, I hadn't looked at them in a long time. And you talked about seeing the original Lucy design. I don't really even think about the character looking like that anymore. Like it's so long ago to me. And yet, because I'm having to go back and looking at that, it's almost like refamiliarizing myself with these earlier versions of the characters. And I also, for what it's worth, I also see myself growing as a writer in these stories. The sophistication of, if I can say that about myself, the sophistication of what I'm able to do now versus the sort of thing that what I was doing then, it's leaps and bounds. So, but at the same time, I do think that there is a charm about these stories because they are so, classic in a way. They're very classic comic book stories.
they are, and for those who don't necessarily know what we're talking about when we talk about Lucy, is you did redesign her in canon. That's what I love about it, is there's an absolute canon reason why she is now, shall we say, more Zoftig
Yes.
than she originally was, a little more kind of Bride of Frankenstein-ish, but also the smartest woman in the world.
Yeah.
And again, to give context, Solar City, where the adventures of Halloween Man take place, is this great futuristic thing. I had not read Hack Slash at all. I'd never read that crossover. So getting into that, I think, a couple weeks ago, I emailed you and was like, wait, has this been reprinted before? Because the only reason I was into that I was following it was because of watching Revival on Peacock, like knowing that was Tim Seeley and like going, oh yeah, I've never
Yeah.
read Hack Slash, but that you made Hack Slash like this is all you need to know to get into who Hack Slash is, and you did the cool thing. I'm probably going to spend so much time just praising you, which I'm sure you enjoy. Uh, you did the thing of bringing in uh, the donkey lady, which
Donkey Lady. Yeah.
but not even in Solomon's world. It was it was in a Hack Slash, and I didn't know that was a thing. Again, La Llorona, sort of, but with a mule-headed twist, if
A
you will.
donkey head. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love folklore and I love in particular Texas folklore. And anytime I can put a little bit of that in there. And something about the donkey lady when I was thinking about a way to because Cassie and Vlad in that story really are kind of your eyes into the Halloween Man universe. But something about the donkey lady seemed like it made a lot of sense for the Hack Slash universe. Although I guess the cool thing about it is the Donkey Lady isn't dead in the Halloween Man universe. So I guess I
No.
could bring her back. I could bring her back if I wanted to scot free. But um you know I loved getting into those characters. I was one of the first people, or maybe the first person, other than Tim, to write them. And it took me a long time to get the voice down for Vlad. Cassie came pretty easily. Vlad was a little bit more difficult because he has a particular speech cadence. But what I really liked about that crossover is kind of putting them a little in over their heads because they're in a much more straightforward horror universe without any of the sort of crazy science fiction elements that are in Halloween Man. So suddenly they're in this world where there's giant robots, but there's also a big tentacle kaiju, and there's zombie superheroes. Like they're kind of dropped into the middle of a Halloween Man story that's already taking place.
Hmm.
And you get to see Halloween Man's world through their eyes. So it was meant to be user friendly. If you don't know who, Cassie Hack is, you can read it. If you've only ever read Halloween Man, you can still get some enjoyment about it. But if you've also only ever read Hack Slash and you want to read, gets you into Halloween Man, it's a good entryway to either character, which I think is, you know, there's a particular way of doing crossovers and how now having done I've done three crossovers now, and I sort of feel like you have to be a good custodian of the other property
Hmm.
and say, here is this character. They're in our universe. This is but aren't they cool? Like you have to make them look cool. So maybe your fans will go and go off and want to learn more about them. But this was the getting that hack slash crossover, other than it being put out by Image originally, has not been widely in print. Like Tim has reprinted it in a couple of hack slash things, but I actually had somebody approach me at a con with a copy. And he said, these are going for $50 a pop on eBay. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So, I guess what I'm saying is I'm out to devalue everybody's eBay copy now
No, it's
is
not going to work that way. But I wish we had that. I wish I could remember the French phrase. But you know, when you sell something on the secondary market, an artist actually still gets a piece of that. So it's a shame. I mean, it's nice to be able to say, "Ooh, a book I wrote was $50 is worth
Yeah.
$50," but uh,
Doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not getting a piece of
you
that.
need to
Yeah.
sell more. You just need
Yeah.
to write more.
Yeah.
So again, we at the panel we did horror from the heart of Texas at Comic-Con that we brought up all the folklore, and I think that's what really impressed me. Like you do not use, at least in these early days, right? You do not use established monsters in terms of like if you have a werewolf, it's a different, it's not Larry Talbot. And yet I
No,
see so many books and I enjoy them, so I'm not cutting them. But I see so many comics say, okay, you're gonna have Dracula. No, you don't. And you even when you went for the Headless Horseman, it's the one from Texas, which I still
it's the
have not
one
had
from
a chance
Texas.
to learn more about. So you are my only so far exposure to the Headless Horseman of Texas.
When I do a popular monster trope like the Headless Horseman, the thing I always think about is, okay, here's a headless horseman, here's a creature, a fish creature, here's this. But how do we make it unique to our universe? Like what is the way that it fits in here? Like one of the more recent web comics we did our take on the Phantom of the Opera, but because Halloween Man takes place in Texas, it was the Phantom of the Opry. He was
Of
a he
course it
was a
was.
he was a country music musician. And so like that is kind of the way I always look at these classic monsters is how can I do my own spin on them? It's not that I don't love those books or like Dracula is actually literally it's my favorite book, and I'm not ruling out ever doing Dracula necessarily, but if I did Dracula, first of all, I would have to have 100% the best kind of Dracula story to do it. It wouldn't just be because it's a big name character, but also I would want to do a spin on him that was unique to Halloween Man. It would be our version of that. And it means a lot to me that you appreciate that. And yeah, even in early years, that was always my mission statement. Like any fantasy character, science fiction character, horror, any character or creature or whatever, is that we had to make it make sense in the universe that Halloween Man takes place in, which often, not always, but often usually how do we put a weird Southern Gothic twist on it, which is why you get El Muerto, the headless horseman of Texas, instead of the more famous one from Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Well, it's somehow more visceral. I mean, it's interesting to see. It feels more like the back roads of Texas, a kid in a sports car losing his head makes more sense with it. It's a Texan. It's very odd. And I also, if when people pick this book up, you'll see so how trying to come up with the right way to phrase this, how malleable your characters are for different art styles because I think
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of different styles going on in this book.
Oh
Nicholas
yeah.
Scott, obviously, David Baldeon, another great, and and I named them because they are now named. I mean, they're both gone
Yeah.
on to
They're
work for
big.
Marvel and
They're
DC. They're big
very
names,
famous.
and
Yeah.
you found them. So but there's got a few others too. I apologize that I don't remember their names, but it all works. It's still all consistent no matter how he's drawn,
Well,
whether it's cartoony or not.
that is one of the reasons why I picked some of the stories that I picked is because, David and Nicola have very classic comic book, they're what you think of as, an American comic book style. But, I have guys like Sergio and Holland in here that have, perhaps a little bit, different, in some ways, maybe a little more retro or a little bit more kind of Saturday morning cartoon. But I want people to see all these different versions of the characters because I think that is first of all, it shows you that these designs are strong because they can survive reinterpretation from a lot of different artists, but they're still recognizably themselves. But also, I like that as a writer. When I pass off a script to an artist, especially, if it's an artist that has kind of a different style, I want to see how, they're going to interpret the characters. And you talked about the differences between, Lucy now and Lucy then. When I started doing some newer stuff with Nicola, for the 15th anniversary. Wow, that was 10 years ago now. What was interesting is then seeing Nicola, who had up to that point only ever worked with the original Lucy character design, being able to go in and do her interpretation of the new Lucy design, which was very gratifying and amazing to see. And of course, she's a boss, so she nailed it. But like, and that is the version of Lucy we have on the cover, because I still want people, I'm sure there is going to be some people, it's like, well, they'll recognize because of her hair, she's got that Bride of Frankenstein hairdo. But I think they're probably going to be like, there's a slight difference in design, but that is the version of Lucy, I guess, that I want people to meet. So that's still the version that's on the cover.
And you can still find her on Global Comics, and I'm sure there are still other books circulating
Well, and of
around.
course, the idea is that if this sells well, and I really hope it does, that we do volume two, volume three, volume four,
Hmm.
because there's 25 years worth of back catalog that again, I'm constantly, the one thing I'm getting at conventions more than anything is like, well, why isn't a physical version of this, easier to get a hold of? Well, vote with your dollars. Go out and support this. I've been
Hmm.
saying this so much on social media. Bookstores and comic book stores can be very risk averse. So you're gonna, tell people that you say that you want this, go out and get it, let
Hmm.
people know that you want it, and we're going to keep doing it because I want these characters to also, the people who do love it, I want them to be able to get their hands on a physical copy of it. But I also, I want new people to meet these characters too, and
Hmm.
maybe, hopefully they'll see something interesting about this weird hodgepodge universe that I've made.
Well, you know what? This is 25 years. It's amazing. What keeps you going after 25 years with this same cast of characters?
I've been asked that, a few times over the last few months. I got asked it a lot at San Diego, and I never get bored with them. Like they're any kind of story that I want to do with them, I can do it. And it's every genre that I love. It's horror, it's science fiction, it's superheroes, it's comedy, it's romance. It's got all these different elements. And so, really, it's just, the stories, they keep coming to me. And that's kind of what keeps me going is I want to see where they go next. I have all these stories that I've written, but I just keep coming up with new ideas and actually looking at these earlier stories. It caused me to go back and rewrite, or not rewrite, but write some news stories set during that time period, because I found something, very fun about that Monster of the Week format that I don't do as much now, because
Hmm.
I've gotten into doing more complicated stories like you end up doing. And I was like, well, I kind of want to do some in that style again. So yeah, I just never get bored with them. And I owe them a lot too. I mean, I've said this, on your panel. They got me through some of the roughest points in my life, the death of my twin and everything. If I hadn't been doing this comic, I would have lost my mind. So I owe it to them to keep this alive as well, because they helped me. And I know that sounds very sort of postmodern to say I owe something to a fictional character, but I really do feel like it's true.
No, it's your life's work, and so I don't want to belabor Halloween Man Volume 1 coming from Red 5 Comics slash Dread 5 comics, hoping,
Ooh.
well, I mean, I talked to them at Comic-Con as well. You're kind of launching a new imprint, even though they've done
Yeah.
horror, that this may become the ongoing bad pun imprint that everybody will love. And so that's the end of September, hoping for more. You can also find uh, Drew's work at globalcomics.com.
Yes.
But I'm with those fans that come up and say, "Why isn't this physical?" Like, of course I could read it on Global, but I was so happy to have a book. And maybe I'm just old fashioned, but I really enjoyed seeing that. And like I said, jumping around in 10 years worth of storytelling and seeing your work. So this is awesome, and look forward to the next time we chat. And hopefully, it'll be for volume two or something in between. Who knows? Wait, no, we've already talked about the matron. So go back to
Yeah.
that interview, people, with David Bowles talking about the matron, which is coming very soon as well. So,
Well, we got actually a volume two Kickstarter launching the day after Halloween. So, like, unlike most years where I get a break after October, from I'm going right into promoting that for just in time cannibalism, just in time for Thanksgiving.
okay, well, why not? And so I'm going to bug you and David probably sometime near Halloween. So excellent. All right, man. Have a great day. Thank you so much for taking some time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I will see you later. Thanks for watching. The party's not over. It's just going to be a little bit quieter from here on out. Please hit the subscribe button and visit fanboyplanet.com for more content, because you never know what's coming next. I know I don't. And remember, use your powers for good.